It's a great IEM to practice every single dynamic driver IEM that came out that's under $500.
Well, you heard the man. Oh wait, I need the case.
It's good, but a little boring. Happy Lunar New Year's, guys. This is the Origin, the new single dynamic driver from Tanchjim, and today we'll be comparing it to some other well-known single dynamic drivers like the EA1000s and the LM. The Origin has a balanced and clean sound with a tiny bit of mid-bass sprinkled on top. Well, actually not a tiny bit, a decent amount I would say, but it doesn't sound too warm, which is why I say it's a tiny bit. Overall, the dynamics are very smooth like the LM, but just cleaner. They're still very balanced and clean, just a little bit worn from the mid bass. Low end impact is punchy, notes are well separated, good texture, not booming or soft or anything, but I did find the attack isn't as tactile and I guess clear as the EA1000s when it comes to the sub bass rumble, the notes, or the attack from the kick drums. The front mats have sharper imaging because of the extra upper mids, which translates over to the attack on the notes, but I mean the orange bass isn't orange bass the Origin's bass isn't bad. It's pretty good. The characteristic is more similar to the LM in that they're both high quality, but just not as tactile compared to the formats. And also the Origin doesn't nearly have as much bass in terms of volume compared to the LM or even to the formats, which gives it that more balanced sound signature. I mean, just overall it's a very solid low end that doesn't get in the way of the mids, and personally out of the three I still like the formats low end the best because it just feels more resolving because I guess of the little extra sharper imaging. The main star of the show on the Origin would actually be its vocals. Female vocals especially sound beautiful on these. Sweet, lighthearted, if that makes sense, extended, open, and doesn't come off thin or shrill sounding. Again, dynamics are great on the Origin, very smooth. If you like more husky and powerful vocals, I suggest looking elsewhere. The note weight on the Origin isn't hollow or anything, and it's very natural, very beautiful, but I wouldn't consider them thick, meaty, or deep and full because of the tamer low end plus the extra air, which makes things a little bit more lighter. For example, on Hello, Adele sounds sweeter and less deep in her chest voice in the verse. You hear less of the rumbling and the deep reverb in her lower octaves, and instead at the chorus she sounds more open and light, less heavy and less powerful, less in your face, which I guess it's good or bad depending on your preferences. Personally, I think the Origin is missing some deepness in the chest voice and could use a little more sparkle, since again, very clean mids and vocals, but it doesn't feel anything special compared to the formats, for example. It's definitely not as thin or light as the Planars or the Chopin, the Nova, or stuff with a scoop, but I wouldn't consider them super powerful, full. Vocal wise, the format is the best for me out of the three. It's sparklier, it's clearer, you can hear more nuances in the voice because of the extra upper mids, and a little bit of low end, the sub bass, adds just enough weight without going into husky or warm territory like the LM. The Origin just feels very correct, very normal, balanced, but it's not as forward, and again, not as, I guess, engaging as the formats. And the formats actually feels more open in the head stage, which is weird because the Origin should have more air based on the graph, but on self-control at 255, the reverb in Frank Ocean's vocals are more obvious and the decay lasts longer. You can hear more of the echo on the formats, which creates this sense of space. Maybe it's because of the extra clarity in the vocals, allowing you to hear more of the reverb on the song, which in return gives off that illusion of a bigger sense of space. But then again, it's all just psychoacoustics, so now when it comes to treble dynamics, the Origin is just as smooth as the LM, but cleaner because again, there's just less low end, and at the same time, well extended as well. No jarringness, not super airy like the Helios, for example, but it's enough when it comes to cymbal crashes and just overall the sense of space you get. Treble wise, the formats are the sharpest in terms of the note transients out of the three. It's a little bit more resolving than both the Origin and the LM because it does sound a little bit sharper, and the Origin is around the same as the LM in terms of overall resolution. All in all, if the Origin is a balanced and clean sound, then the formats would be slightly bright and sparkly, and the LM would be the warmest and bassiest out of the three. So all three actually have their own spot, or I guess flavor, with all of them being mid volume sets. You can't really crank any of these too loud unless you mod them, which I did a lot of. If you're interested in the mods, go check out the graphs. But the mods, I actually like the formats the best. It has just the right amount of energy and liveliness to the vocals without being overly warm like the LM, or too boring like the Origin, which doesn't have that, extra energy without sacrificing the upper mid's clarity. Not only does this sound the most resolving, but the extra sparkle on the vocals along with the more tactile low end brings this liveliness that you can't really replicate with neither the LM or the Origin. I guess you can, say it's got that special sauce that the other two just doesn't have or just are missing. Mod wise, the EA1000s also have the most flexibility because it's got a good amount of upper mids to work with, before sounding too boring or too dark from the filters like the Origin, and also not too much bass like the LM where more filters and sponges will just turn it into like too bassy. Honestly, right now the Origin is in a bit of a pickle, like in a bit of a bad spot, because it gets outcompeted both in price and sound by the EA1000s and in value by the LM. Yeah, the Origin is smoother than the EA1000s, but that doesn't really make much of a difference, and it doesn't really matter that much at mid volume because you don't really run into any of the scaling issues. And since these are both mid volume sets, the formats are just more engaging in both the low end and the vocals compared to the Origin, while also being a little more resolving and just has that like extra bit of like sparkle and like special sauce. Yeah, it's more energetic, but you're not blasting neither of these stock. And if we're talking about scaling after modding, then the formats also mod better, and they also sound pretty smooth after modding as well. So not only that, but the Origin also has to deal with the LM coming for its neck at 2 times cheaper, or more than 2 times cheaper, with similar resolution and actually better bass texture and just more bass in general. And on top of that, you also have all the crazy sets like the Nova, the Chopin, the Quintet, and even the Hype 2 on sale. The only scenario where the Origin could be a valid option is if you want a balanced set with smooth dynamics like the Nova, the Chopin, or the Hype 2, but you don't want the scoop in the mid bass. Then in that case, sure, Origin would be a good alternative. It's clean, smooth, balanced. However, the problem is that the competition moves at a rapid pace, and knowing Sci-Fi, someone's probably gonna release something similar in like a few months for like half the price or something. So I don't know. Again, it's a very well-tuned set, very beautiful in the vocals, but if it was around $150, then I think it would have been more justified and actually more future-proof as well as a, cleaner LM. But as of now, the formats are, I guess, just quote-unquote more special to me personally, and the LM is also cheaper with better bass, so unlucky. I can't stop you from buying these necessarily, unless you really want that clean and smooth sound right now. Go for it, but my recommendation is to wait a little bit because there's gonna be more stuff coming out for sure. And also the extra nozzles don't do anything. But yeah, I hope this comparison was helpful. Thanks for watching, guys. Happy Chinese New Year's, and I'll see everyone in the next one.